Hey guys, and welcome to this new adventure that I'm starting by doing a podcast. I think in order to start doing this podcast, I need to kind of introduce myself and give you a little bit of history about where I've come from in this industry that I've been in. So I'll kind of start at the beginning. It was about 2003 or so is when I became an appraiser, a real estate appraiser in this area. And I was 22 at the time. There was a guy that lived across the street from me. He had gotten into it, and he was making decent money. And at 22, I knew I wasn't going to be going to college. I made that decision long before 2003. That was in high school. I decided, college is not for me. Different avenues, financially, I just did not have the drive to do that. So I fell into the becoming a real estate appraiser through this guy that lived across the street, and I watched him work from home. I watched him get a good paycheck, and it was enticing to me. So I took the course, I got my license, and I started working for the company that he was at the time. And at 22, I didn't really know what the heck I was getting into. I didn't know what the industry meant. I really didn't know what being an appraiser was, and I just kind of jumped in, head first, so to speak, and just started doing it. I did, of course, train with, my bosses and the owners of the company that I was with, and I learned a lot by doing that. But at the same time, in your mid 20s, you don't really pay attention to what exactly is going on around you. So I just kind of, stayed in the groove that I was on. I was working for them. Everything was going good. The market was going well. And then, I started getting a little bit older. Didn't necessarily pay attention to what I was doing, but I started getting a little bit older, and I didn't necessarily make great decisions. So around 2005, 2006, I had some personal struggles, whether it be financially. I had gotten in trouble, in different other avenues that, affected me on a mental level. But I had good people around me. The company that I was working for was a good one. It was a large company. They're well respected in the area. And the boss there at the time, he kind of looked after me, and he kind of took care of me, and he helped me out in more ways than one. So I was able to kind of push through and stay on course and stay in the business. I feel like had it not been such a respected profession, so to speak, I may have kind of gone off the deep end a little deeper. But because my job was so important, it kind of helped me turn around a little bit quicker. So I was able to kind of work through that, and that was about 2005, 2006 timeframe is when that was going on. And then we started getting closer to 2008, and then I think anybody in real estate knows what happened in 2008. We had the beginning of the Great Recession. We had a financial crisis that happened, and again, in your 20s, you don't necessarily pay attention to what's going on around you. I would come to work, and the owners of the companies would be talking about, Lehman Brothers just closed down, and Bear Stearns closed down, and Countrywide, which was one of the largest, if not the largest, mortgage lender at the time. They're shutting their doors. They're getting bought out. Washington Mutual. These are companies that are over 100 years old that were shutting down in this industry that I was involved in, and I had no idea what was going on. It was tough in a sense that I saw the stress level on their faces, but at the same time, I personally didn't care. I was showing up to work. I was doing the appraisals, the way they needed to be done. I was doing them correctly, but I was not absorbing what was going on around me. It wasn't until years later that I realized how big the financial crisis was with subprime mortgages and adjustable rate mortgages. I mean, they were handing anybody that walked into a bank, they were giving you a loan for a house without checking any sort of financials or anything like that, and it created a serious problem. But again, I wasn't paying attention. So again, years later, I saw a movie. I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but it's called The Big Short. I would suggest that you watch it. It's got Christian Bale, Brad Pitt. It's got Steve Carell, and they're all in there, and they're pretty much reliving, and it's about that financial crisis that happened in 2008. And it's super eye opening. They break it down in layman's terms. I mean, it's a great one to watch if you really want to understand kind of how it happened. Obviously, it's a movie, there is some fluff in there, but it gives you a good idea of what happened in '08 for me to, kind of experience. Didn't realize I was learning something at the time. Looking back on it, of course, I did learn something, but I wish I would have paid more attention then. And then, of course, that rolls into the Great Recession, as they call it, and it was a huge downturn. So that was going into what, 2008, 2009, and at that time I had met my wife at that time. Broke, obviously, because the market had taken a downturn. I was young. I wasn't saving money as I should have been. I'm, not necessarily great at it now, but especially then, you're not necessarily paying attention to, what you should be doing your money. I was concerned about, Thirsty Thursday or whatever the heck was going on around that my friends were doing that I wanted to be involved in. So that's what was happening in my mid 20s. So I meet my wife. We start, obviously doing everything that any couple would do. You move in together, you start planning. We get engaged, we get married. All that moves into, the 2010s up to moving up to 2020. We get married, things like that. And then I was at the company for about 10 years, and I made a decision that that is not where I wanted to be anymore. I wanted to do things my own way. So I left this company reluctantly because remember my boss at the time, he was very helpful through a dark time in my life. So it was very tough for me to make a decision to leave a company that I was comfortable at. I was making a paycheck. They were supporting me, they were training me, they were making sure that I was staying on the right path in this industry, but I still was waking up and dreading doing what I was doing. I was not happy doing it. And I spoke to my wife and I told her I don't want to work with them anymore and I want to do this on my own. Luckily, I had a very good friend at the time. He was kind of not necessarily going through the same thing, but he kind of had the same mentality of, yeah, let's try it. He was an appraiser also. He had gotten into insurance, but he was willing to go back to appraising, and I started my own company with him, and that was the end of 2012, 2013, and I still own that company to this day with him, and we are still doing appraisals full time. And it's a struggle, if you've ever owned a small business, it's not easy. It has its ups and downs, and especially if you're kind of dictated by what the market is doing and what interest rates are doing and whether or not people want to purchase and rent. There's a lot of variables involved in real estate, and when your profession is dependent on that, it's very stressful. So but we stuck with it and we're still with it, and everything's going well, and we were doing that normal, plugging along, making a paycheck. I was able to purchase a home. He was able to purchase a home. And then COVID came. Now, I don't I don't necessarily think that anybody is going to necessarily forget COVID. But there's a lot of things that I look back on and you do kind of forget certain situations that happened during COVID. Of course, we're not going to forget wearing a mask. We're not going to forget staying 6 feet apart. We're not going to forget going one way directions down the supermarket aisle. Crazy things that you look back on, you're like, what were we doing, as a society? But we did it. And during that time, as an appraiser, that particular moment, so that was 2020 when that happened, for the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years, that is the most insane that I've ever seen our real estate market was during that time. We've had moments where property values go up and property values come down. Obviously, after the financial crisis, everything crashed down. I mean, just came to a screeching halt, mostly due to bad loans and all sorts of things that happened there. Again, watch the movie; it'll help you understand. But the things that were happening and the way people were bidding on homes, and then you couple that with the government's handing out money. However you feel about that, it's irrelevant, but the government's handing out essentially free money, and then they drop interest rates down to the basement. That is the main issue, in my opinion, of what created the market that we're in, is when they dropped interest rates down to next to nothing. Okay, we have so many people right now that are hanging on to their homes because they are essentially interest rate locked into their homes. They may have a 2.5 or a 3.25 or something like that, and they're like, well, we're going to wait for interest rates to come down. It's probably not going to happen, but good luck with that. But that time for COVID was very, very unique. We were busier than we had ever been. I'd never been so busy. Up to that point, it was 18, 19 years in the business, and never had I been that busy, and we couldn't go to an office to do it. You're working from home. You had to be creative in how you do your physical inspections of the properties because somebody may or may not want you in the home because they were concerned about COVID, or if they were there, you had to stay your 6 feet apart, and it was tough. But at the same time, we were making money, and when that happens, you almost kind of take for granted the situation that you're in. So when you're making money, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, this is great. Go out to dinner. We'll do this. We'll do that. We'll do this. We'll do that. And you forget about the bad times almost. And you kind of get stuck in that good groove, not the bad one anymore, but a good groove. And by doing that, you get a little bit lazy in a sense. And then we get closer to where we're at now, and interest rates get hiked up because inflation goes crazy, and now we're at the complete opposite realm of where we were during the COVID time, and that creates not a problem in the market, but essentially it creates a market that people are very, very, very nervous about, and they're very scared to put their feet in the water, so to speak. And that's, you could point fingers wherever you want, and I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to give an opinion on what I think, but pointing a finger doesn't solve anything. Okay, so where we're at now, I to go back to the story, I kind of wanted to give my background so you better understand. If you do start following me and you do start watching these videos, you understand what I have gone through to get to this point, to where I do have a camera in front of me and I do have a microphone in front of me, and I will have people on this podcast that I will be interviewing that are influential in our community, or maybe they're influential in the real estate business, mortgage brokers, you have title agents. There's so many different facets that I believe a lot of people are not very knowledgeable about, or not to sound bad, but very ignorant in the ways of real estate. And that's not a bad thing, but I think it should be a good thing that we push knowledge to them and give them an outlet and a place to go. And that's what this is intended to be. I want it to be entertaining. I want it to be knowledgeable. I want it to kind of express my opinions towards what's going on, good or bad. And you do not have to agree. You do not have to disagree. It's entirely up to you. That's the point of an opinion, right? So that's kind of where we're at now. Throughout the last few years of being an appraiser, my wife had been on me about becoming a realtor. And for the longest time, no, it's a hard no. No, I'm definitely not going to become a realtor. There's a lot of different reasons. When you're an appraiser for 20 years and you meet so many different realtors that are out there, you tend to get a little bit jaded by a lot of them. Now, that is not to say that every single realtor that is in our market is a bad realtor. Absolutely not. No, there is definitely some very good realtors out there. In fact, the company that I'm working for, I chose that company because of the brokers that run it. There's people out there that are doing the right thing, but everybody knows a realtor. Anybody that's going to listen to this knows probably 3 to 5 realtors that they can call on a dime. And because of that, you have a saturated market of one profession that raises the probability of having someone that doesn't know what they're doing, or it has someone that does not have the consumer's best interest in mind. This is one of the most stressful situations anybody's ever going to do, is purchasing a home. And if you have a bad realtor that is guiding you through this, it does not make the situation any less stressful. It's just going to compound it and make it worse. So by me becoming a realtor, I told my wife, I said, if I'm doing this, I'm going to do it differently. For one, obviously I'm doing it to on a financial reasons. You want to make a paycheck, you want to make a living, you want to support your family, you want to keep the lights on, all of those things, definitely. But I'm not going to wake up every morning as a realtor and let the amount of that paycheck dictate how I'm doing my job. The paycheck is the bonus. The paycheck is what the end result is. You're going to help somebody sell their home or you're going to help somebody buy a home. The end result is the paycheck. The work that you put in up front to get these people to the finish line, that is what it's about. You don't sign a paper with somebody, meet them the first day, and immediately start calculating, well, if I don't get this much money, then I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to do that. And then you start getting jaded and start treating them badly. And then you come home and say, oh, I'm working for free. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Yeah, well, you kind of are at the time. But at the same time, you're earning their trust. You're earning this buyer's trust. You're earning this seller's trust. You're earning the trust of colleagues, other realtors. I mean, as I'd mentioned, I don't like realtors because there have been so many that I do not trust. And I think that's on them. That's not on me. I'm there to do my job. You should be there to do your job. And if you're not doing your job and it makes my job more difficult, well, then I don't respect that and I don't trust that. So I know that's kind of a tangent, but I wanted to put it out there for those that will start listening to me that you understand where my head is at in this business. And I do appreciate real estate and I do appreciate going into homes and looking at different types of quality and how homes are built and designs and styles, everything. I mean, that's just the fun part of it. Are there negatives? Of course there are. That's with any job. There's no job I don't think you can go to where there's not going to be at least some negative. There's going to be something that somebody complains about or somebody's not going to be happy with. But at the end game, in comparing the appraisal side that I had done for so long and becoming a realtor, the appraisal side, I can count on maybe one hand how many times somebody has called and say, "Hey, thanks for doing an appraisal. That was great. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time." Doesn't happen. But we will get calls, weekly on a monthly basis to where they're complaining or I'm being turned into the state or somebody's going to write a complaint against me online and complain about things and it's mostly value related, which is understandable. You own a home that all your life is in this home and you have pride of ownership and everything. I understand when it's upsetting or it's a slap in the face when somebody says that your home's not worth what you think it is. I get it. But that doesn't mean that you should, kick somebody down because of what they said. That's silly to me. But so less than, let's say 5 people over the course of 20 years that have called me and said thanks for doing an appraisal. But on the real estate side of it, on the realtor side, it's a satisfaction just showing people homes and letting their faces, light up when they see one that might be the one. And then you get them all the way to the closing table and then they get keys and they now are homeowners. That is a very satisfying feeling. I'm not going to lie to you. And then, of course, then the check comes and it compounds that. So that is where I'm at now. I'm a realtor full time. I am an appraiser full time, and now I'm creating this new venture right now, which is this podcast and putting myself out there on social media, which is tough to do. I don't know if you ever tried to do it, but it's hard. It's not easy. You kind of get down these like rabbit holes where you hit dead ends all the time, and you're wondering what you need to do and what do I do today, or what post do I need to make, or what video do I need to make. Well, it's really not about what you do. It's just doing it. I did a conference not too long ago, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Jared James, but I did a conference of his, and he made a statement that kind of stuck with me when I was deciding to do this, do the podcast, do videos on homes, create a YouTube channel, create a Facebook, an Instagram, all those things. And he had said something that meant kind of broke it down and just made you like it just clicked for me. And it was visibility trumps ability, meaning it is better just to put yourself out there, good or bad, than it is to be good. Okay. So by me doing this video, it could be horrible. I don't know. I'm going to find out when it's over, to be honest with you. It could be horrible, but the fact that I'm going to put it out there to make myself visible in the community and as a realtor, that trumps the ability to do it. Okay, so I don't know. I'm not here to coach anybody. I'm not here to tell people this is what you need to do or this is, the path that you need to take. But it was something that stuck with me that kind of gave me the confidence to do it, so to speak. So, of course, if you have something going on in your life, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So, but moving forward, the idea of this podcast and my Facebook and my Instagram and my YouTube channel, everything that I'm going to be having put out there is again to kind of put some entertainment value into real estate, bring some knowledge about the real estate and the purchasing and the selling process to buyers and sellers and consumers out there so they kind of better understand it in layman's terms. There's still a lot of things that are deeper than, what I'll ever talk about. This is just scratching the surface, obviously. But I just want to put it out there to make people feel maybe a little bit more comfortable if they want to ask a question, or maybe helps kind of push them a little bit past the line. Says, hey, I was looking to buy, but I just don't want to, or I'm scared to. Well, maybe this will help, So, and whether it's, me or another agent, hopefully it's me, but whether it's me or another agent, again, the idea is just to put knowledge out there. Knowledge is power, right? So that's the idea behind this. There's also going to be entertainment videos, silly things. I'm going to interview people. I'm going to put things about the community that are out there. I hear all the time. Obviously, we're living in a world, in Port Orange at least, that there's a lot of PTSD with storms and flooding in this area. And, I was very fortunate, and I can't imagine the people that have gone through this once, some twice, some three times, maybe even more. I can't imagine what those people are going through. We were very fortunate at our home. It got, up to our house. Unfortunately, most of our neighborhood, I live in a neighborhood that most of the homes were underwater. And I remember touring the neighborhood after the storm and having almost like a survivor's guilt because you felt so bad for these people. But I want to put information out there for situations like that help. Maybe it puts people at ease, and then maybe it also prevents the spread of fake news. I mean, we all understand what happens on the internet nowadays. You go to the internet, it's true, right? Right. Um, I'm trying to prevent that. Okay, it irks me when I hear people talk and they're just saying things as if they're fact, and they're only saying it because they read it somewhere and they're assuming that it's fact. Where that person that posted that, they didn't do any sort of research. They didn't look into anything. They didn't talk to anybody at the city. They didn't experience it. They don't live in one of these neighborhoods. They're just making an assumption because they want a finger to point at somebody. And I don't necessarily think that's fair. Is something to blame for situations? Of course. But at least we can put things to light and make things a little more understandable to where my lights dimmed on me. We'll pick up here. I can edit it afterwards. So the idea is to put information out there that, is reliable. And again, it's only going to scratch the surface. There's always something deeper. And a lot of times people don't have, one, the time to listen to anything deeper unless it truly affects them. Then they will. Um, but again, I grew up in Port Orange. I love this city, and I love that my kids are growing up in the same city that I did. And it's a shame when you see so much division amongst people. And it's there's not much I can do about it. But if I can do just a little bit to kind of, make people feel at ease about certain situations, or again, learn something about a certain situation, then I've done my part. If it helps two, three people, then great. Those are two or three people that had no idea before. So if that's what it is, then that's what it is. So again, this podcast it's going to get better with time. There will be guests on. I do have plans for what I want to do with it. It could go in a different avenue. It could go in a different direction. It could leave the real estate realm. It could leave the community realm. I don't know. But the main purpose for now is going to revolve around real estate, and it's going to revolve around our community, and not just Port Orange. We're going to go, I'm going to expand it out to Daytona, Ormond, because we visit those areas. How many of us, go out to dinner down in New Smyrna or up in Ormond or on the beach side, or you want to visit different, stores or entertainment places, and they're not all in Port Orange. You do get outside of this. So the community as a whole is everything that surrounds us as well. So stay tuned, pay attention to what I'm doing, and then if you're following me, great. I appreciate it. If you're not, give me a follow. If you want to learn something, if you want to have ideas of what I can put out there to help, let me know. I'm down. I mean, if you think you can service the community in a certain way, let me know. I'll get you on here. I'll ask you some questions. We'll let the community learn who you are and what you do and what you provide. That's what this is about. So I appreciate it. I thank you for listening. Stay tuned. There's going to be plenty more to come.